Welcome to Our Town, a 30-minute podcast brought to you by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks.
Today we're talking to special friends, attorney Michael Collins and Dr. Joe Novello, both outstanding professionals in our town. One a lawyer, the other a doctor. Each would have made my mother proud. Any mother proud, for that matter. Their past job experiences range from being a United States Navy flight surgeon to an owner of a water slide in a place that doesn't need it in Southern California, to having a dietary supplement company for weight loss. Both stars on WMAL radio, I am proud to say. I want to give you what these guys are so much alike. They have in common. They're both a domers. That's a new word that you guys haven't heard for a Notre Dame alumni. I hear that from young kids that go there, that they're domers. They're both obviously Catholic. Both are professionals, lawyer, doctor. Both are conservative. Let's have a show of hands for that. Both are married. Both live in Virginia. Both are friends. Both have had a successful show on WMAL. Both have had a successful career. And now both have ended up on Our Town. As I tell everybody, Our Town is not Washington, D.C. It's the whole metropolitan there. 6 million people. When they ask where you're from, if you're from Bethesda, you say Washington. If you're from Vienna, you say Washington, because people think Vienna's in Austria. But they're both important, and I'm so delighted that they're with us today. And I'm going to start off by talking to Michael Collins, Joe. We'll hold you for the big part, Joe. I'm saving you.
I mean, warm up act here.
Yeah, the
Andy,
warm up.
That's what
I'm warming up myself. Michael is as an entrepreneur. Started. He's the guy with the water slide, not the Navy. Michael is the managing partner of the Collins firm. He's an attorney. He has his own show, and I think of the theme, Joe. It's what L.A. Law.
L.A. Law.
What a great theme. People hear that and they think of, hey, that's Legally Speaking on WMAL. And also the youngest graduate from the University of Notre Dame in 1961. We don't know if that's true, but it sounds good, doesn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it makes a good story, right?
Doesn't make a good... Well, who could be younger?
You know what happened? I was such a lovely child, so easy to get along with, that my mother lied about my age and got me into first grade when I was, 3.5 or something. No, at 5 years old. And
child prodigy.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, or obnoxious, one or the other. And then, when we got to school, this was an experiment they carried on back in the 50s, and Joe's probably seen some of the unfortunate results, but they had what was called an accelerated program. So they got these kids in school, in grade school, and decided that they had to move them through quickly because, again, they were such troublemakers. So I got through school 8 grades and 7 grades. So that's how I got to college at age 16 and whatever.
Very young age.
Yeah, well.
Is it still true? Do you know if any kids get into that? I guess there are plenty of kids
well,
that smart now.
You got these real prodigies. This was just the luck of the draw. Like I say, they were forcing me through the system. Anyway.
Actually, there's another luck here that's away from it, but your life and your people in your age group sort of missed the Vietnam War. It's something that happened before and after of your age group.
Yeah, exactly. None of we were chatting about this earlier. None of my close friends at Notre Dame, some of whom, 2 or 3 of whom were in ROTC, but none of them ever went overseas. Just because we were just a little ahead of the mass migration to Southeast Asia.
Well, I got caught in the age gap, but I did something about it for the Korean War, because all the guys I went to school with were very vulnerable to the draft, so we all joined the National Guard and said, we'll fool them. Wrong. They activated the Air National Guard, and we were gone. Boom. A lot of them went to Korea. They didn't know where it was. They thought it was someplace in Chicago, they would say. In their Koreatown in Chicago. No, it's in New York. But Joe, Michael, why'd I get you mixed up? You grew up in Chicago,
yes,
correct?
I did. Yes, I did.
And your dad was the first Notre Dame fan you met?
Yes. Yeah, he was a 6th grade graduate, didn't quite make it to South Bend, but he did not miss a Notre Dame home game for 49 years. They had season tickets, and when the tickets were in somebody else's name, there was a group of 10 guys had season tickets for all those years. And the guy that was the original holder passed away. My dad had been running the program for several years. He let the school know that, hey, by the way, send the applications to me next year because this gentleman has passed away. They cut off his season tickets.
Oh, my.
Oh, my God. So I went through a letter writing campaign to Father Joyce, and finally got them to agree to give him 4 season tickets for his lifetime, on my promise that I wouldn't lie about his longevity.
Did he reinstate you?
They know they didn't reinstate me because I never had season tickets. But anyway.
I told you the story, and I'll tell it now. I met Father Joyce because my brother was the attorney for the university TV station, and I met him in the office, and he was in town for a Navy Notre Dame game, and he said, "Would you like to go to the game, young man?" And I said, "Oh, I would love it." He reached in his pocket and handed me 2 tickets for Navy Notre Dame, great seats in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. And
I said to my brother, "What a generous gesture." He said, "Yeah, generous." Like a week later, he got a bill for the 2 tickets. He said, "Father Joyce is not known to give things away."
Yeah, well, education.
That's how that university is so strong. And Father Hesburgh's the same way.
Do you remember what year that was? I came to the Navy game in '58 when I was a sophomore.
It was probably in the 50s, early 60s.
Baltimore.
It was a long time ago, but I was in broadcast. I was with WMAL at the time. But, Michael, what about this? How do you feel now what's going on in your world, which is, it's not only finance, but it's estate planning, which is people with finances. But you're only after an adult audience. Is that correct in your business?
Pretty much so. We invite people to our seminars, and we start with people somewhere around 50 years old up through the duration. Because it's difficult enough to get people who really, really ought to be doing their estate plan to do it, let alone talking to 30-year-olds. I mean, what are they thinking about? So our demographic, as we say, is, say 50 and up.
Well, obviously you have to have people to have some estate so you can plan it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to be a plan if you have nothing to plan for.
Well, yeah, right. It reduces the
and you run into all kinds,
urgency.
Of course.
Yes, we do.
Your seminars are so important.
They learn a lot, have their eyes opened, get motivated. That's the real advantage of this seminar program, in my opinion. People get motivated. They get over the hump of they've been procrastinating for a long time, know they should do this, gonna do it someday, come to a seminar, and they have their eyes opened a little bit, and like I say, get motivated to get the job done.
Well, and in the seminars, you don't really charge. You give them great legal advice for approximately no charge, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
That's a stipend.
Yeah, we used to charge, but it's kind of like my mission now. I just feel that it's
a missionary.
That's me. That's me.
You're benevolent.
Yes, I am. I'm a wonderful human being, Andy.
I realize that. Yeah. You are wonderful. Anybody can start a water slide in Southern California with the best beaches in the world has got to be impressive, and that's you.
Well, you know what? The first thing
Tell
we
us
started,
about California.
It was right near Disneyland, but it actually started with a skateboard park right across the freeway from the water slide. This was at a time when... this was the second skateboard wave that hit this country. This was in the mid-'70s. And kids were skateboarding in malls and parks, et cetera, And, of course, the oldsters, you don't know any of them, do you, by the way? Oldsters? No. Geezers. Were
My
complaining.
skates were always 4 wheels, incidentally.
Yeah, yes. And that wasn't enough. But people were complaining, hey, these kids are running amok, and they're, going to run somebody over. The kids, of course, were saying, hey, we have no place to skateboard. So we went to the city of Anaheim and said, tell you what we're going to do, fellas. You lease us some ground, excess park property, for $1 a year. We'll spend the money to build a skateboard park. No one knew what a skateboard park was at that time.
We'll believe that.
Yeah, we'll build a skateboard park. Kids can come there. We'll charge them something because this is a private enterprise operation. And so you'll win. The old people will be happy. They finally have they get them out of the parks, get them out of the malls. We'll make a little dough. You'll be heroes because you provided recreational outlet for the kids of Anaheim. We had kids. We opened that thing the day of the Notre Dame, Alabama game in 1976.
Uh-oh.
Now, of course, I couldn't miss the Notre Dame, Alabama game, so I'm in South Bend when we finally opened this damn thing. But I get a call from my partner. He said, John, how's it going out there? He said a lot of things, but he said, they're coming from all over. We got people all over the place. He said, but right now, the fire engines are here. Somebody has skated down one of these concrete runs, run into the wall at the bottom, broken his leg, and he's laying there in a pool of blood at the bottom. This was the
hazard.
This was the day we opened. So
Did you tell him to close up?
Oh,
no, keep it open.
No, are you kidding?
Wipe it up.
Yeah, no, this is an attraction. So anyway, we started with a skateboard park, and then
But you had a relationship with the county then, right?
Well, then we had a relationship, exactly. And so in the course of looking for other skateboard park sites, we came across this water slide. There were none of them in the West Coast at that time.
Incredible.
And so the next thing you know.
But everything, particularly to in automobiles, it's been true for years, all the good fads start in California and move east. And maybe that happened with water parks and certainly with sliding boards and so forth.
You got it.
But I know in Southern California, I've never lived there, but I always wanted to. They told me to go home. And I did. I came back to Washington. But the beaches are spectacular in Southern California.
Yeah.
And you still had a water park make it. You're amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But because the weather's good. You've got a good season for it. And
10 months almost, right?
Not 10 months, but 6 months anyway. And look, you've got 10 million people in the LA basin. This was in Orange County.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
You were benefited from Mr. Goldens and the ABC people that financed that park for Disney. Did you know that? That was an ABC TV effort to finance the...
What, you mean Disneyland?
Disneyland.
Really?
They were partners. ABC and Disney were partners in the park.
That's right. The show was on ABC, wasn't it? Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Disney.
Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier.
You got it.
We're talking to Mike Collins, host of WMAL's Legally Speaking. Mike, it's incredible to hear your stories, but coming from the Midwest, why did you come to our town? Why didn't you stay in Southern California?
No. I'm getting out of college before I came to law school here. Went to Georgetown to law school.
Before you went to the West Coast?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't. I thought that was later.
Yeah, no.
Did you pick Georgetown or they pick you? Well,
I got a degree in something was called engineering science.
Wow.
If you remember when I was a freshman at Notre Dame in the engineering school.
The youngest freshman, I would add.
Well, I guess I was, yeah. In 1957, when the Russians launched the first Sputnik.
I remember that.
Mass pandemonium in the American scientific community. And so several schools around the country, including Notre Dame, set up this department in the engineering school, taking the most promising, sort of the honor roll engineering students and put them into this interdisciplinary curriculum. They were going to have people that would be aeronautical and electrical and mechanical engineers, and they were going to train them so that they could coordinate the efforts of the other engineers in the space program, which was all big. So they're soliciting these guys that are at the top of the class. Now, I didn't quite make the top of the class. In fact, I spent most of my time in engineering school reading novels. But anyway, I saw that they didn't have to take a second year of what was called engineering drawing. Plates, you do, which I can't draw a stick figure, let alone. I never completed one plate in the entire first year of law. And I see that in this program, you don't have to do that anymore. This is beneath these guys, you see. So, long story short, I sweet-talked one of the engineering professors into letting me into this program on the promise of one of my good friends who had been solicited or recruited into the program, that this guy would help me get through, which...
A tutor.
He was a tutor. He was a mentor, this classmate of mine. So by the time I got to fourth year, I realized I couldn't screw in a light bulb, let alone be an engineer. So I had to do something. Bunch of my friends are going to law school, and so I applied to a bunch of them. Georgetown took me.
Out of the blue, you picked Georgetown. You could have gone to Boston College. You could have gone to.
Well, Georgetown is
the oldest Jesuit college in America.
Yes, and probably the preeminent Catholic law school.
Absolutely, law school
in the country.
According to Edward Bennett Williams, who's one of the professors there.
Exactly, Edward Bennett Williams was a professor at that
there
time.
One day for lunch, and we were working on a contract.
Yeah,
but Georgetown is prominent worldwide for the law. Janice and I stumbled into their 200th anniversary. I think it was in 1989.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The 200th anniversary of the Georgetown, of the campus and so forth. Sure. What a great institution. It's a great part of our town. So many famous graduates. None more famous than Michael Collins.
Well, hardly the case. Maybe more infamous, but yes.
But none more successful than Michael Collins. Well, Michael... we're going to take a break here and going to bring in Joe Novello, who we have tried to avoid, but you can't. He's here, he stayed, and we're going to bring him in. So give us a break, and then we'll continue our town, and I'll interview Joe, find out as much as I can, and then we'll all end up together. We'll be right back.
This is Sonny Jorgensen. Got a confession to make. I let my wife drag me to one of those Mike Collins estate planning seminars. Like I don't have enough on my plate with a certain football team. Actually, it wasn't too bad. In fact, we both learned a whole lot about how to protect our kids and grandkids down the road and to take care of ourselves right now. So if you get one of Mike's invitations in the mail, go. I'm glad I did. Get all the information and register online at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
We're back here on Our Town and getting an opportunity to talk to the most famous psychiatrist that I know, Dr. Joe Novello. I think I mentioned this in the beginning. Joe was a Navy flight surgeon, our Navy. He's written many books. He graduated at the University of Notre Dame, went to medical school at the University of Michigan. He was listed as one of the best doctors in America as a child and an adult psychiatrist. He's listed in Washingtonian Magazine as the top psychiatrist and a very dear friend. Joe, I like to tell the story, and Janice reminds me, many years ago when my son, Christian, was a young man and he had some behavioral problems, and he was visiting from Southern California, actually. He was visiting me for the summer. It was my summer to have him with me. And I was having problems, and he was having problems. So I asked you, could you spend a few minutes with this young man as a friend, and for no fee, of course? Would you, if you want to keep your radio show, of course. What you told me and what I'll never forget, and I tell parents this all the time. He said, look, he's a teenager. Your advice was he'll either grow out of it or he won't. The best advice, Joe, I ever had.
You want to hedge your bets a little bit here, huh? It sure beats saying something like, Andy, why do you say that? But it worked, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, good advice.
He grew up. He's a fine young man. He has his own family now, and he's a great kid, and he works hard. He's not a kid anymore, Joe. He's in his 40s.
He's a
but I tell that to everybody else that worry about their children, particularly teenagers. Who can correct a teenager? Time.
Right.
Or it either will or it won't.
Give it time.
So, Joe, tell me, I was so surprised to know about your career in the Navy. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't a career. It was sort of like a sentence. You had to serve your time, right?
That's right. I was a resident in surgery at the peak of the Vietnam War. So all the docs were getting drafted. My number was just about to come up. But I thought I'd try to get ahead of that a little bit and see if there were some other options. And I found the Navy Flight Surgeon program. Now, I had to give it a little extra time, but it was well worth it because they train you in the flight training aspect and survival training, and there's the Aeromedical Institute and so forth. And that was a very time well spent down there in Pensacola. Then I was all geared up and at the top of my skills, ready to go, and the Navy sent me down to guard our southern flanks. I spent the next 2 years in San Juan, Puerto Rico. and it was wonderful duty, and I had a great 2.5 year career, limited in the USN.
And you did get to Gitmo, you told me.
Many times to Gitmo, as a matter of fact. That was close by.
Right?
Yeah, my squadron often made hops over to Gitmo, yes.
Now, what do you think now about, this is away from psychiatry, but it is important. What do you think about the country now agreeing to open Cuba to us, to the Americans, and vice versa?
Well, I look forward to visiting down there. I want to see Cuba as it is at this moment before it becomes something else.
Americanized.
Miami Beach South or whatever it's going to become. No, I'd like to get down there soon.
Yeah, now it's almost like a rollback in time. I read about it and see about it and hear about it with all the old vehicles, old buildings. But everybody seems so happy, so they must be doing something right, Joe.
I don't know.
We'll ruin it.
We'll get. I don't know about that, but
inevitably.
Yeah, I'd like to go down and get a good look. Mm-hmm.
So, how did you end up at Notre Dame? I know how our friend Michael Collins went to Notre Dame, but how about you?
Well, I grew up. I had a brother and sister, and it was the dream of every immigrant or immigrant-related parent to have one son a doctor, one son a priest, and they should go to Notre Dame. So naturally, I went off to
It's a typical
Notre Dame.
Italian family.
I didn't have a choice. Yes, I did, as a matter of fact, but it was a good choice, and I'm pleased that.
Where were you living? Were you from the Midwest?
Cleveland, Ohio, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
Yes.
Big doings there. You've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but we'll get into that later. But so you went to Notre Dame, and one of your brothers became a priest.
Well, sort of.
Pseudo-priest.
He almost made it. You're talking about my brother, Don.
Yes.
Don later developed a career in comedy, and many people remember him as Father Guido Sarducci on Saturday Night Live.
One of the more famous characters they've ever had on Saturday Night Live. And he could pass for a priest anytime, could he not?
Often did, as a matter of fact. Yes.
I used to tell people that if you really want to get on an airplane, have your just clerical collar. Mm-hmm. You don't have to say anything. Just walk up to the counter and say, I'd like to get on this flight. Yes, Father, I'll take care of it. You don't have to say you're a priest.
Yeah.
People see the collar, put you on the airplane.
Yeah, you walk into a restaurant, the best veal comes out of the kitchen. You know, it works.
Just wearing the clerical collar. Well, Joe, what else did you do besides Notre Dame at the University of Michigan? That was your medical school?
I went to medical school at Michigan.
In Ann Arbor, or was it in Detroit?
In Ann Arbor. And then I had that stint in the Navy. And then instead of going back to complete my surgical career, the Navy kind of changed that direction. I got really interested in psychiatry. And then I went back to the University of Michigan and spent 4 more years there in my residency in psychiatry.
Wow, that's a lot of education, Joe. You may be overeducated, Joe.
You think so?
No, not too educated for this market. We need help. But I also, in dealing with, I've asked Michael about it, are you dealing with millennials? This seems to be part of our, I didn't even know what a millennial, I thought a millennial was a mile somewhere up the road towards Baltimore. But there's a different breed of people now that are coming into our mainstream in our society. Do you find it more valuable? I mean, they need you more than the poor old people that came up in my era and Mike Collins' era?
No, not necessarily. And I'm pleased that I am both a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, so that I can see people across the age spectrum. I find that people of the various generations, although the coloration and the camouflage may be a little different, the presentation of the issue is a little different, at the root of it all, we still deal with the same things. We still fear the same things. We want the same things. We get anxious about the same things. I end up treating the same kinds of conditions.
So there's really no age thing. There's no age gap with people that need help. It can be 5 years old or 50 years old.
Absolutely.
80 or 90. And so millennial is no different. That's good to know that.
Yeah, they deal essentially at the root with the same kinds of issues, yes.
I'm glad to hear that. I've got some friends in the 80s that are a little wacky. I'm going to give them your phone number, Joe. But it's been a great, great time to have you on WMAL and be a part of it. And I remember your Saturday evening show.
Yes.
When I would be getting dressed to go out on a party or a date and listening to Joe Novello and talk to the people who would call you with some of the weirdest questions I've ever heard.
I've had some weird ones, but you remember, Andy, we were kind of ahead of the curve at that time. There wasn't that kind of radio being done. We didn't know how that was all going to work out. You put a psychiatrist on the air, that's kind of a wacky idea first, and then you're going to have live callers, and what's that going to create? And I was very pleased with the way that all worked out. I think we were able to reach out and do some things for the community. People could call in anonymously, ask questions that they might not have a chance to ask their own doctor, or maybe be too embarrassed to do that. And I was pleased. And then the show moved to a Wednesday night at one time. I'd follow Felix Grant on the air.
I remember that.
Oh, yes. And then we were nightly for a couple of years, and I would follow Trumbull and Core, do a little walk-on with them before the show. And then Ken Beatrice used to come on after me. And one of my greatest moments was during this time of year that we're recording now. Redskins were in training camp. And Ken had gone out to training camp, maybe up in Carlisle at that time, I'm not sure. But he was late. No cell phones at that time. It's 5 to 9. By now, Ken's callers would have flooded the air, and mine would never get through. But my callers were still there. And where's Ken? The engineers are running around trying to get on the phones. They determined that he was stuck in traffic coming from training camp. And so the engineer says, well, Doc, what do? Do we fill with music? I said, look, I'm a psychiatrist, but even I know that's not good radio. I said, people are expecting Ken. You're next on Sports Call. And I said, you got all the callers for Ken. You got none for me at this time. I guess I could have vamped, but we didn't know how long it was going to be. So I took his first caller. And the guy says, hey, Ken. I said, no, I'm sorry to disappoint you. This is the psychiatrist speaking. And he said, well, hey, what do you think about that defensive end? He goes about 6'5", just a hair maybe short of 6'6", good lateral moves. And I said, oh, you must be talking about so-and-so. And they're joking with me. They know what we're dealing with. We had told them on the air. But Ken's callers were very kind. We took about 2 or 3 calls. And then Ken comes running in. He's desperate. He's
been listening to you on the radio.
Yes. He walked in and grabbed the microphone. I'm here. You've been waiting out there. I've got your calls. I'll stay in the studio all night. Anybody miss me?
He would.
Oh, yes. He was so kind and gracious.
But you saved him
good.
that night, of course, Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
No, that was fun. We all enjoyed it, and I think the listeners did, too.
Oh, absolutely. The amazing part, as you point out by Ken, his calls would pile up anyway if he'd be back in the office. Like he'd say, call me in the office. He'd stay there till 12 midnight answering people. They should have gone home.
Right.
He was a weird guy. He needed your help, too.
Well, he was a wonderful man.
He was great. Janice and I went to his services. He died, and he moved to Warrenton. And we went to... That's right. Joe was at the Catholic Church.
Yes.
He was very active in that parish, evidently.
He
was very well respected.
Yes, he used
to train. Very dear man.
He developed a kind of a mission of his own. He would train people in doing the readings at masses.
It's just great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the amazing thing I thought about Ken, I sort of felt sorry for him. Then I realized that he might have felt sorry for me because I'm a dummy compared to his knowledge, but he was a WMAL guy. He was part of our town.
Yes.
No matter where you go or who you talk to, people remember Ken Beatrice. They remember Michael Collins. They also ask about Joe Novello. I had Ben Bradley, who was then the publisher or managing director of the Washington Post, tell me that he would get in his car to go home and he'd park in his lot or before his garage door in the entrance, sitting listening to Ken to finish whatever he was doing. And I said, here's the man that's running the Washington Post, that's sitting in his car listening to our guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, amazing. That's the impact our local talent had in our town. And you were part of that, Joe.
I was pleased, and I was pleased that we were able to pull off what we did. I don't know if a program like that, Andy, today would be successful because it's gone the route of confrontation and entertainment, and you allowed me to sit there, take however time I needed with a caller. I was never under pressure. And listen, it had to be entertaining and informational, but I always had a sense that we were, most times, genuinely helpful to the caller. And I've done a lot of things since that time, television and radio, and been a columnist for many years, written several books. But among all those media experiences, I think the call-in show on WMAL is the one that gave me the most joy and the most professional satisfaction.
Well, and you did whatever the show did for you, you did for the station and the company. We would all remark on it. We're the only radio station in America that could have a staff psychiatrist. And people would say, was they for the listeners or the staff? And they were really for the listeners, but the staff needed help too, which was so wonderful. But Joe, I recall those days and recall your impact, and particularly with the callers about the children.
Yes.
And they were simple. You didn't give them real, wordy answers. You told them simple things to do or not to do, and I know they appreciated it.
Wasn't that a wonderful thing? MAL's demographics at that time did not include a child audience.
That is correct.
And we were stunned when we would get this occasional call from a 9-year-old. My mommy and daddy are going to get divorced. I heard them talking about it. And so that engaged them in a conversation about what that meant and how they felt about it. And I never expected to get those kinds of calls. They were among the most memorable.
Well, we would do that when the kids would call Ken. They'd call Hardin Weaver. And I run into people now that say, I used to call Hardin Weaver in the morning, and I said, why would you call? They said, well, he was 7 or 8 years old, and that was their morning host, and they had felt, significant that we would call.
Yes.
I want to find out how you got to WMAL. You were in our town, but you ended up here. It's
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
How'd that happen?
When I first came to town, I was on the faculty at the Georgetown Medical School, and I think one of your producers must have been looking for a psychiatrist to comment on something that was in the news, and so the Public Relations Department at Georgetown put me together with MAL. I did a soundbite. Then they invited me back. You had a reporter, a wonderful guy named Jim Slade, who went on to bigger and better things. He did a show in the evenings where he would interview mostly scientific types, physicians, and he'd take calls. We did that a couple of times. He hosted, I answered calls. And then I guess that led to something else. I got a call from MAL. Someone asked, gee, would you be interested in auditioning for a program? I didn't know exactly what I was getting into, but I came over one afternoon. Dorothy Jones handled that audition. And then I was invited to do a Saturday evening show, which then went to Wednesday evenings.
That's the one I used to hear all the
Then
time.
Monday through Friday for a couple of years. And so that's how it evolved.
So we reached out to you then. You didn't come to us. That's great.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll finish up on the Jim Slade story. I knew him very well because he was one of our ace reporters. He had some friends in the Navy Department, and they had a search party going to find Amelia Earhart in the South Pacific, and he asked to go along, and would WMAL support him, pay for the trip, and we did. We agreed. We thought it was a great story, a local reporter, and he did. He went, and he was going over there for like 6 weeks. He's going forever. He didn't find Amelia Earhart, and we didn't get our money back either. But we sold the thing. We said, we'll turn this into a commercial,
right.
Which is not a bad thing, Michael, right? Michael, how did it happen to you? I mean, we know we reached out to you.
Well, Janice came upon me. She had a proposal that we do some commercial announcements, actually, and actually, when I was a young person, I always wanted to have a radio show, and so she didn't have to sell me on the benefits of radio. And I remember saying to Janice, that I really like your proposal. It sounds good. I think it'd work. The only problem with it is I'm going to need twice as much time as you're trying to sell. And so...
There, Jenny.
Yeah, and... So anyway, that's how we got started, and then it kind of Joe's story reminds me of the situation. I did some guest stuff on Rick Edelman's show. Rick would call me in, and we'd chat
Talk
about
to each other.
Something about in my field, and one thing led to another, and got my own show.
It's so amazing that Rick is another example of being on WMAL, and this is not a complete story, but part of a complete story. Rick had a problem with advertising or or doing things with other stations because he was so loyal to WMAL. He didn't want WML to get mad at him. It's a true story. We had to convince him that the world has changed, Rick. We don't own the market. The WML is not what it used to be, and these other stations are now prominent. And as I was on the break talking about what cable has done to our industry, and whatever came from after cable was casting of different kind. So Rick now understands that there's more to the world. Thank the Lord for you and Joe and Rick and everybody that's so still loyal to WMAL, as I will be and as Janice will be. You cut us open and we bleed WMAL. And it works. But let's get back now to how you two guys get along. You're two different worlds, but you never appeared on his show, did you? Because I guarantee you got customers that need help.
Yeah. I may have appeared on his show and they got, someone calling in. As Joe said, some people are too embarrassed to tell their own doctor what's really going on. Well, that would be my family, I'm sure. No, I'll tell you how I got. We used to listen to Joe. We came here in 1985. And I'd gone to law school at Georgetown, and so I was familiar with WMAL. I remember listening to Cardin Weaver back in the 60s. So I tuned into WMAL because the Redskins were on. So we'd hear Joe every night, going out, doing chores, whatever, hear Joe. Famous guy. Didn't know he was Notre Dame, didn't know anything about him. Years later, I got the law firm, and by that time I'm pretty busy. I'm not really seeing new clients, and the receptionist calls one day and says, "There's a gentleman on the line right now. He'll only talk to you." And I said, "Well, look, her name was Carol, as I recall. Carol, look, you know the deal. I'm just not available to new clients." And he said, "Well, this guy's very insistent. His name is he's a doctor apparently, Dr. Joe Novello." I said, "Holy, Joe Novello." Put
That's
him
amazing.
through, because this guy in one of the pantheon of celebrities.
He's a star. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now again, I didn't know he was Notre Dame. If I'd known that, I would probably go, wait a second. But anyway, so Joe and I got chatting, and the rest is
That's
history.
how you found out you had so much in common.
Well,
right?
yeah.
Both
yeah.
from the Midwest, both Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Both rich.
Well, I don't know.
Well, Mike, you have my estate in trust. Am I rich? I don't know. You know more than I do.
Rich and famous. One of us is rich, the other one's famous. No, I'm not true.
Well, rich and famous. But seriously, Joe, you didn't know his background as being Notre Dame, did you, when you called him?
I think I may have, as a matter of fact. I might have heard that reference.
Almost impossible to listen to the show and not realize that. You understand?
Indeed, right. Yeah, you bleed WMAL, of course. Mike and I
green,
bleed
absolutely.
green. Yes.
Now, what about it's happened to your university, though? I asked him about the sports question. I can ask you the same thing. Now they're putting suites in, right? They have decided they need more money, so they become commercial, which is kind of a shock for a Catholic school. Huh.
Well, yeah, they're making improvements to the stadium. I haven't been out there as recently as Mike has. He might have more information. But one of the things I like about the concept is that they're using it also for classroom activities and so forth. It's going to be a multi-use, unique kind of operation over there, Mike.
Yeah, it's very interesting. They're building a huge building, which is going to be an adjunct to the stadium. So they're going to have, as Joe says, classrooms, offices, conferences, etc.
So it's not inside the bowl, then? It's adjacent to it.
No, it's not inside the bowl.
But the seats are. I mean, the high-priced seats.
I guess they're going to have
suites.
Executive suites, yeah.
That's happening in the Midwest. Michigan now is loaded with them.
Yeah.
I understand Michigan's going to take out the benches.
Oh, the bench seating, you mean? Yeah. Notre Dame's not doing...
Notre Dame still benches?
Still... We call them half-bunners, I mean, there's a number on the bench, and it doesn't quite accommodate the average human being. But anyway, it's another story.
Well, but it's a true story about Joe Novello being an icon, because he worked with some weird people. Like me, I can't get my voice. Let me try that water. Is that your water?
Try some of that water. Take a couple... ounces there. This is doctor's orders now. Going down pretty well. All right.
Thank you, doctor.
Yes.
So what have you seen now happen to our town? In your sphere of influence, you're both Virginians, so you haven't seen what's happening to the city, but have you noticed how there's nothing but building It's incredible. I don't care whether it's Arlington, Fairfax. I was out this morning at Springfield. I didn't know where I was, and I knew Springfield real well. What's happened to our town? It's exploded.
Well, we go through these cycles. We've all been around here long enough to have seen 2 or 3 of those. We're in a building cycle now, and in the past there's been a tendency to overbuild a little bit, and then it catches up to itself again. But you come in town, you see all the cranes, and
it's amazing.
Things are good somewhere.
Yeah, the flying cranes.
The waterfront, the place called the Wharf, is a $2 billion investment. I don't know where all the money's coming from, but I'm sure the Chinese are in it with both feet or both chopsticks, one or the other. But the building is incredible, and the people are willing to invest in this community, because we're a lot more stable than we realize. This is pretty stable.
The money's all coming in this direction, Andy. The rest of the country notices that, I think. That's why
One of the thoughts I just had, Andy, about D.C. Is this. Mike and I have gone through various phases of our lives. You've been in California and Chicago, and I've been various places, Ann Arbor, etc., Puerto Rico in the Navy. As we go along, we make various decisions about what we're going to do, where we're going to do it, with whom we're going to do it, for what purpose, etc. And there are probably decisions that, if we had the opportunity, we all might change here or there. One that I would not change was coming to Washington, D.C., and living most of my adult and all of my professional life here. It's been a wonderful choice for me. I love the community. I would not want to be anywhere else.
You're listening to Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen with Joe Novello and Michael Collins. We'll be right back. This is Andy Ockershausen talking to Tommy Giacomo and bragging about his restaurant, The Palm.
Hi, I'm Tommy Giacomo. I want you to come down and see me at The Palm Restaurant. I've been there for 43 years. We have great steaks, great lobsters, great food. Caricatures on the wall. It's just a fun place to eat and drink. We're located at 19th and N, just below DuPont Circle. For reservations, call 202-293-9091. That's 202-293-9091. www.thepalm.com.
Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
One of the things that I've loved about our town, and it happens every spring, and that's the flood of young people that come to Washington. They tie up the streets, they tie up the restaurants, they tie up the bars, they tie up everything with people, but they all come to see the capital of the world. They come to our town, and they're tourists, and I love them. And I used to get mad at them on the road, say they take your car up to Michigan, go back to Michigan, but they're so important. It made it quite a cosmopolitan come. We did a theme called Monuments of Marble, Monuments of Stone. It's a constant shining spirit that we have known about WMAL. And we did that because the man who wrote the lyrics was a big fan of coming to Washington just to see the monuments, to see what we have here. And he was baffled by all the green we have. But we grew up with green, so we expect it, correct?
Well, it's a lot different than Southern California, I'll tell you that.
Tell us about your Southern California story about
culture shock.
The water slide. I want to hear that. How did you get into the water slide business with the best beaches in the world?
We got into water slides because we were in the skateboard park business. And my partner and I had built this skateboard park, and we're looking for sites, and we're standing on a site in Huntington Beach, California, which is, Surf City, USA. Anyway, we're standing on this site, and this backhoe driver who was showing us the site said, I saw the damnedest thing over the weekend. It's hard to describe, but it's turned out to be a water slide. It was buried in a campground someplace. So the next morning, of course, my partner and I get in the car. We drive the hell way out and somewhere out in the desert, really, and see these kids on this concrete structure, and families actually from the campground, and kind of got looking into it and found out that this was sort of a phenomenon, that it would started maybe in Tennessee at Pigeon Forge or someplace.
Pigeon Forge, yeah, that's
which I've never been,
right.
but that there was one in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which neither my partner and I'd ever heard of, frankly.
Most people hadn't.
Yeah, but anyway, so we got on a plane, we flew. Piedmont Airlines flies.
Doesn't exist anymore?
No, it doesn't, but it flew that route, and we're circling the field, coming in late at night. It was about 9 o'clock at night, pitch dark. All of a sudden, looking out the windows, you see this hill lighted up, and it's got little ants crawling all over it. And what in the hell? Get a little closer and see it's people on this hill. And it turns out, as we was right close to the airport, as we're coming in from the sky, that's the water slide we came to see. Hell, we go and rent a car, drive over to this place. Here's flooded with people. Like now, it's 9:30 at night. Look at the sign on the ticket booth. It said sliding is $2.75 a half hour. Our numbers that we had seen in this campground were $2 an hour. And the project seemed to pencil at $2 an hour. Now, if you go from $2 an hour to $5.50 an hour, now you got
Now you got an underprice.
Now you got a winner. So
Wow.
then we saw this. We started looking for a really important site, or a visible site. There was a piece of property right near Disneyland, right on the freeway. Was going to be a hotel. There was no market for another hotel. Found out it's a couple Irish guys in New Hampshire that own this. Dunphy Family Hotels. Dig through the property records.
That's a famous hotel name, isn't it? Dunphy?
Dunphy,
Yeah.
one does,
Heard of
but
it.
anyway.
Yeah.
So we called these guys, a couple Irish guys, and it turns out they're in the process of negotiating with the city of Long Beach to take over the management of the Queen Mary. Long Beach had brought the Queen Mary from England.
Not the Queen, but the boat.
The boat, yeah, well, maybe. And
That's an old joke.
the city had run the place into the ground, and socialism run amok here. They're looking for private guys to operate the property. These guys say, hey, we're coming out there. Do you know where the Long Beach airport is? Yeah, sure. Well, we're flying into Long Beach. Hey, tell you what, fellas, we'll pick you up at the airport. We'll take you to your meeting downtown Long Beach. We can chat about this, what we've got in mind. So we pick them up at the airport. We're early for the meeting. There's a Denny's across the street. We go in for a cup of coffee with these guys. And here's what we want. We're looking at that site next to your Sheraton Hotel in Anaheim. Oh, yeah, we've had a hell of a time with it. And it's been on the market for a couple of years. Didn't have no phone calls. We want to build this, start describing this water slide. They thought we were crazy. Said, can we lease that from you?
Well, you're at Denny's.
We're at Denny's. We're on a napkin. This was literally the day of making a nap. We had a napkin about this
I know,
big.
table, right.
Big as a postcard. Scroll some numbers on the table. He goes, yeah, it looks good to us. They go to their meeting. They have their meeting, come out of the meeting, take them back to the airport. They fly back. We give them a proposal. We don't want to lease the property. He said, well, we'll go back and look at it. Called them a week later, talked to their accountant. He says, boy, you guys are, I don't know, you're doing something right. He said, we got the first offer we've had in 2 years on that property you want. But these guys said, hey, we made a deal with those kids out in Long Beach. We were out in Long Beach.
They protect you.
We'll stick with that. And we bought the site. The site, we built what was then the world's largest water slide. The day we opened this site, 40 years ago today, or this week anyway.
In August.
In August, we had traffic backed up on the freeway for 15 miles. The Santa Ana Freeway, those of you who's familiar with Southern California, it's the 5 freeway. 15 miles, because people are going, what the hell is that? And of course, there's stopping traffic.
It was unique.
It was unique. Sold it for a while for a...
That's the better mousetrap story, isn't it?
It is, and of course, 4 years later, real estate recession's over in Southern California. We sold the property for an office building to I think it was a union pension plan, actually. Probably Jimmy Hoffe, maybe. Maybe he's buried there, Andy. We had to look for him.
Well, I remember going down the freeway. I remember Cal Worthington's signs, and that's a famous name to you, I know. Hey, what a cowboy hat.
Right. Cal Worthington was a famous automobile dealer in California.
World famous, correct?
World famous. His shtick was, there'd been a guy up in the valley, up in San Fernando Valley, who did his commercials with his dog Storm. This auto dealer had his dog Storm. So Cal, who's based in over near Long Beach, he goes on with his commercials. He's got his dog, but his dog wasn't a dog. It would be an animal. So he would do his commercials with a tiger or a giraffe or whatever, okay? So we get the idea of, why don't we get Cal to do a commercial at the water slide? Fine. So we talked to Cal, talked to one of his people, actually, one of his, Okay, so they're going to come out there. They rent some little miniature donkeys. So Cal comes out. We shut down the water slide. There's people waiting to get in. They're all, Cal's got his people there. We get this little donkey up to the top of the damn water slide. Of course, you try to pull a donkey, and then if with a water slide, what you do is you'd get into this little bowl-like thing where the water's being pumped up, and then you go over a lip and you slide down the slide. So we had a hell of a time getting the donkey into the water slide. Cal gets in behind the donkey, and we're going to push the thing off. Now, this is going to be a one-time shot.
Absolutely.
Because, well, just, ready when you are, CB, right? There's some lady out there who's brought her son to the water slide. She's pitching a fit because we've got this filthy animal going to be in the water. So she's threatening to call the health department. So they push Cal and the donkey off into the water slide. The donkey doesn't like this. Cal's straddling the donkey. The donkey kicks Cal in the... He screams out. They go down the water slide at one time.
Nobody could make that story up.
No.
But he did do crazy stuff.
He did crazy stuff.
And he ran it, too. He put it on the air.
Yeah, he was and he expanded all over Southern California. Well, not only Southern California, but Arizona, and I think he was in Texas and whatever.
So, Joe, can you top that story?
I can't top that, but I'm listening to this, Andy, and I'm thinking, you and I trust our finances and estates to this man.
Ain't it a great country?
Right.
He doesn't do the donkeys anymore. And Joe, we haven't ignored you, and there hasn't been any chance to bring you in, but now we want to find out, what are you doing now? What pleases Joe Novello?
Well, I'm still practicing psychiatry, but my current project is a biography that I'm writing about a man who was part of our town. His name was Angelo D'Agostino. He was a psychiatrist, also on staff at Georgetown. He was a little different than I was, though. He was a Jesuit priest, and Dag was a man about town here for many years, well known in the halls of Congress. He was known by his first name to the street people in Georgetown and in the White House, Oval Office. He got around. But he tired of it after a while, Andy, and he went to Africa, where he eventually formed the world's very first orphanage for HIV-positive children. And he devoted the next 20 years of his life to that. At first, there was no treatment available. He just helped these children die in dignity with the help of some Indian nuns. He then got treatment available. He came and lobbied Congress to make the medications available to him in Africa. He brought some in on his own when he couldn't get the government of Kenya at first to cooperate. But eventually, treatment became available, and a result of his efforts, there are now thousands of young people alive, functioning, productive in Kenya, especially in Nairobi, the capital, because of him. I've journeyed there a couple of times, interviewed young people who knew him, owed their lives to him. I've been interviewing a number of people over the last 3.5 years, and I've just recently begun the writing process, as a matter of fact, and it's a real joy.
What a project.
Yes.
Oh, my, Joe.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years you've been working on it.
Oh, yes.
And you do have a publisher? You're prepared to go forward with it?
I'm going forward with it. I haven't sought a publisher yet, but at the proper time, I will.
Yeah, they'll want to look at the manuscript and,
Right.
look at it and see what they can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's wonderful. When you were talking about the Georgetown, the psychiatrist, I thought about The Exorcist, which has been part of our town because of the prominence of that movie.
Yes.
And wasn't the priest also a psychiatrist in that the the priest that helped the kid out that had the problem?
Yes, in fact,
In The Exorcist.
Angelo D'Agostino, the subject of my book, is rumored to have had a role in that, not a role in the movie, but as an advisor to the producers and to the actor who played the priest. I've tracked this down. I've corresponded with William Blatty.
Blatty, right? He was the writer,
and he's
correct?
still here in our town, and he lives
I knew
locally. He does not recall Dag's name, so I have not been able to cross-source this.
You can't
so
pin it
that
down.
may not make its way into the book.
But nobody can deny it, Joe. Is Blatty still living in city?
Yes,
he lived
is.
in Georgetown for years, and not in the university, but in the community.
Yes.
We were talking about The Exorcist and what happened and how that movie came back to becoming very popular again. In fact, they tried to reproduce another movie and it wasn't successful. But they used Washington for a lot of movies, of course, and for backgrounds and so forth.
Yes.
And maybe we'll get a movie about what's happening to our Congress and our country, whatever. But anyway, guys, it has been so unbelievable to have both of you.
Great time.
My heroes and the heroes that made WMAL. And, we've got a bunch of them, but no better than you two guys. And so special in our lives. And they keep it. And you're special to each other. That's also.
We are. We've become very good friends in our families.
We're buddies.
Yep.
We're buddies. And let's go Irish.
Go Irish, and thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
This has been a great experience, and thanks to you, Janice Ockershausen, for taking care of us, and for Ken for putting up with us. And this has been Our Town, and we'll be back next week. Thank you, and looking forward to talking to you.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 1 with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town podcast episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. We welcome your comments and suggestions on how you like the show or who you'd like to hear from next. Catch us on Facebook at Our Town DC or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcasts.